We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Tuesday night edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We don't need to really beat around the bush about what today is about. It's one of my favorite shows of the year. It is also one of the most infuriating shows of the year because I am going to make my official 2025 NCAA Tournament bracket picks, and we all know that by the end of the weekend, I'm going to hate them, and they're going to suck, and I'm going to have watched a ton of college basketball for absolutely no reason at all. But today's show, it's straightforward. We don't need to, again, beat around the bush. We're going pick by pick, region by region, game by game, starting in the South, going to the West, up to the East, to the Midwest, just like you would see it on a graphic on TV. We're making pick by pick selections. I'm going to tell you who I'm taking, how I'm taking them, all that good stuff. Also, after we do the bracket, we're going to talk a little bit about, how about this? Just minutes before we decided to go live, Indiana has hired Darian DeVries as their next head coach. I've come around on this. By the way, I was Mr. Anti-Mike Woodson 4 years ago. Didn't know how I felt about this 24 hours ago as it became clear this could become a thing. I have decided that I am in. I have decided that I like it, and we're going to break it all down after the brackets. But right now, it is about the brackets themselves. Before we get started, couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. YouTube channel's blowing up. It's been an insane couple days. We are rolling into the NCAA tournament. But here's the thing. We're not one of those shows that stops the day the NCAA tournament ends. We're talking portal. We're talking coaching changes, NBA draft. The college basketball free agency period of April and May is crazier than the games themselves. So we will be rocking and rolling. Make sure you're subscribed. Also, make sure you're subscribed on Apple and Spotify as well. You want to do your boy Torres a favor? Even if you listen on YouTube, go ahead, go to Apple and Spotify. Go ahead and subscribe and download the episodes there. The podcast advertisers like that as well. With that said, in addition to making sure you're subscribed, rating, and review, there's also a couple other announcements here to start the show. First of all, it's March, and I just told you, my bracket's probably going to stink. So it's time to compete against Torres, and it is time to compete in something a little bit different this year. We are doing an Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool this year for the NCAA Tournament. Producer Matt, make sure that link gets in the show description or the YouTube chat. You can also pin it atop if you can. If not, I'll get to it in a commercial break. But Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. Listen, we've all played Survivor Pool for NFL, college football. Now it is coming to the NCAA Tournament. Listen, this is the new age way. Brackets are so 2023, okay? No, I'm just kidding. Brackets are awesome, but this is a Survivor Pool, and it's pretty simple. All you got to do is pick one team every single day, and if they win, then you advance as well. Here's the catch. You can only pick any team once. So you pick whoever. St. John's on day one. You pick Auburn on day one. You pick Duke on Friday of the NCAA tournament. You can't use them again for the rest of the NCAA tournament. And so this is fun. You'll compete against me. You'll compete against listeners of the show. And here's the best part. You're going to earn some cold hard cash, okay? So it is $20 to enter. Again, the link will be in the show description after the show. The link will also be, by the way, pinned atop the YouTube chat. So enter $20 to enter a minimum $500 cash prize. But the more of you who enter, the more money goes into that pot. Share with some friends, share with some buddies, send the link over to your pals. It's also, by the way, pinned atop my Twitter page at Aaron_Torres. So make sure you join, compete against me, and take my $20 because I guarantee you I ain't winning jack you know what in this pool. Also, in addition to our Aaron Torres Pod NCAA Survivor Pool, a quick reminder. With March here, you're going to be busy. You're going out, you're going to games, maybe even a concert. I don't know what you do in your free time. But listen, if you're going to the NCAA tournament this weekend in Providence, in Denver, in Seattle, wherever you're going, here's the thing. We got a special deal with our friends and with our partners at SeatGeek. Okay, so SeatGeek, listen, best ticketing app, over, 70,000 tickets. Thousands of tickets are getting purchased on that website every single day. It's the number one ticketing app on the internet. And here is the best part. Listeners of the Aaron Torres pod, it's pretty straightforward. All you have to do for your first purchase, use code Torres at checkout and you get $20 off your first purchase. So you're going to games in Providence. You're going to games in Denver. By the way, it's not just college basketball. My mom, I love her. She's probably listening to this show right now. She just bought some tickets to a hockey game. Promo code Torres. She got $20 off. Had a buddy use it for an NBA game. You want to go to concerts. You want to go to shows. You want to go to this. You want to go to that. SeatGeek.com. SeatGeek app. Number one ticketing app anywhere. Use promo code Torres. You're going to get $20 off. By the way, that's good for all of March Madness. So maybe you're not going to games this weekend, but say you're a Duke fan, a BYU fan. If they make it to Newark, you're going. You can use code Torres anytime in March. The first time you use it, $20 off your first purchase. With that said, it is March. As I said, listen, there is no more time to waste. There's no more time to beat around the bush. Let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, as I said, it's one of my favorite shows all year long. It is our NCAA tournament bracket pick, okay? You don't need me to oversell it, overanalyze it. What do we? No. We're going region by region, game by game, and I am giving you picks for the 2025 NCAA tournament. Worth noting, last year we did pretty well. I gave you UConn over Purdue in the title game. Purdue fans said I hated them. No. Pick Purdue to go to the title game, lose to UConn. Hate to brag, but I won the Fox Sports Radio Bracket Challenge. So I just bring it up to very simply say that it is a fun time of year, and let's just get into these brackets game by game and break them all down. We're going to start. We're not wasting time. Let's get right to it. We're going to start in the South region, okay? South region is where Auburn will play the winner of I guess it is the game that's literally going on right now. So I should reference, we are recording this on Tuesday night. So the 4 play-in games have not been played yet. Alabama State and St. Francis of Pennsylvania. By the way, shout out to St. Francis of Pennsylvania, who beat my Central Connecticut Blue Devils in the NEC championship game. The winner of that will play Auburn on Thursday. Listen, I could go on. I could spend a bunch of time. Auburn's going to win. Auburn advances. Don't think there's much to add there. Still mad at St. Francis for knocking Central Connecticut out of the NEC. But it is worth noting, I should mention this, is that we are live before the play-in games go final. We'll get to the North Carolina, San Diego State game in a minute, but that game will be later today. Obviously, Xavier, Texas will be on Wednesday night. And so I just bring it up because we had to do this right now. You got to get the pot out before the bracket, is finalized so that everybody can listen. My official pick in the first game of the bracket, yes, I have Auburn beating the winner of Alabama State and St. Francis. Let's go to the 8-9 game. Listen, I talked about it a ton on Sunday's show. I think it's preposterous. First of all, I think it's preposterous that Louisville is an 8 seed. Louisville was a top 20 team for basically the final month of the season. They've won 21 of 23. This, I believe, is actually the opening game of the NCAA tournament. By the way, Louisville fans, if you're just tuning in, we got SeatGeek, promo code Torres. You get $20 off your purchase, so make sure to take advantage of that if you're going to Rupp Arena. But I'll just be blunt. I really like this matchup for Louisville. Listen, Creighton's a really solid team, but their starting point guard, Pop Isaacs, has been out. I think if you can get into them defensively and limit them, you can do a pretty good job of taking care of Creighton. Louisville isn't very big. I think they could struggle with Ryan Kalkbrenner. I just don't know that there is enough around Ryan Kalkbrenner for Louisville to for Louisville to be worried. Think about Louisville too. They, one thing about Louisville, because we're going to talk about them a little bit more in this region. Really respect how Pat Kelsey always has that team ready to go. They never play down to competition, and they never play scared in big games. Beat Clemson in the ACC tournament after having not played a meaningful game in a while, and then took Duke. They were leading at the half. Love Pat Kelsey. Love what he's building. I actually see a little bit of Pat Kelsey in the Darian DeVries hire, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I just bring it up because I think Louisville wins that second game. There really isn't that much to add. Let's go to the 5-12 matchup in this region. The Michigan Wolverines versus the UC San Diego Tritons. I think everybody knows the UC San Diego story by now. This is their first year eligible for the NCAA tournament. They go 30-4. I think the other thing that's kind of worth noting, the best team against the spread in college basketball was UC San Diego. They were something crazy like 28-6 against the spread or whatever. And Michigan, of course, is the Big Ten tournament champs. Now, I'll be real. This has become a trendy 5-12 upset, and I get it. First of all you got to do is look at the point spread. UC San Diego is like I think they're like a 2.5 point underdog, which is just insane to think about. But I just bring it up to very simply say is that the betting markets seem to think that the upset is going to happen here. By the way, the big kind of stat to know, UC San Diego, top 5 in the country in fewest turnovers. Michigan turns the ball over quite a bit. The stat that I care about, though, is this. Michigan has 2 legit 7-footers that can play, that can rebound, that are athletic, that run the floor in Vlad Golden and also in Danny Wolf. And I just think that size is going to be too much for UC San Diego. UC San Diego's biggest player is about 6'8" or so, biggest guy that plays consistently. I think Michigan controls the glass. I don't think there's a lot of second chance opportunities. I like Michigan to win. By the way, speaking of trendy upset picks, Texas A&M, the 4 seed in this region against Yale. So I'll be real. Listen, I get it. Yale took care of business. They beat Auburn a year ago in the NCAA tournament. They're back. By the way, they did have Danny Wolf last year, who's now at Michigan. I don't see it in this game. Now, Yale, to its credit, shoots the crap out of the ball. And Texas A&M, as we all know, is one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. But listen, I'll just say this about Texas A&M. I might have said Texas Tech there. Texas A&M, whatever. One of the best. They're not just one of they are the best offensive rebounding teams in college basketball. We've talked about Texas Tech or Texas A&M. We'll talk about Texas Tech later. We're talking about Texas A&M right now. The Aggies, Buzz Williams. Okay. But we've talked about Texas A&M. It's football on hard court, but they've kind of mastered it. And so I don't think it leaves them very much margin for error because they're just not going to score a lot of points. And I understand that in theory, Yale could get hot, but this game is at altitude. And I just think Texas A&M absolutely wears people down on the boards. I'd also add this too, and this is going to be a theme throughout this episode, is that, I think there's this notion that SEC teams are going to struggle with refereeing in the NCAA tournament. I actually think it's the exact opposite. I think all these NCAA tournament refs want to advance. They don't want to be the guy that calls too many fouls. And I think a team like Texas A&M, a team like Auburn, a team like Tennessee, Arkansas even, I think they're actually going to get a looser whistle than they did during the regular season. Advantage Texas A&M. They beat Yale in a 4-13 matchup. So all chalk at the top of the region. Let's go to the bottom. Ole Miss is facing the winner of North Carolina versus San Diego State. That game will be played after we go off air tonight. I could have waited till that game goes final, but I just think it was the right move to make to go ahead and to get this episode in with plenty of time to spare. And so when I look at the North Carolina-San Diego State matchup, I do like North Carolina to win that game. If they don't, it's another conversation. And I'll say this. I think it's at least worth noting from the North Carolina perspective that to their credit, I think it was 7 wins in a row going into the regular season finale against Duke. And then they lose to Duke in the conference tournament without Cooper Flagg. We know that. I think North Carolina is capable of pulling the upset over Ole Miss, but I will ultimately take Ole Miss. Thing about North Carolina, we know it. They're small. They're just small. And I think that when you look at Ole Miss, outside of Paduller, I don't even know what that was supposed to be. Outside of Sean Padula, I don't know why I said Paduller, like I've never watched basketball before. Outside of Sean Padula, big guards, Matthew Morrell, Breakfield's a wing. North Carolina does not have very much size. And so I think Ole Miss is able to make it physical. I think Ole Miss is able to beat up North Carolina. And I think Ole Miss wins. And I also think, by the way, if they play San Diego State, they'll win as well. So Ole Miss, I do have advancing as a 6 seed. I think if North Carolina wins, though, they can give them a game. I'm not sold that San Diego State would give them a game if they won. Let's keep it going. The 3 seed against the 14 seed in this region is the Iowa State Cyclones. They are taking on the Lipscomb squad. That is, of course, the ASUN champions. Lipscomb, the Bison, played some pretty tough competition. Producer Matt bailed me out on that one. I'm not going to lie. I did not know Lipscomb's mascot before we came live here. But bring it up because, listen, Lipscomb actually played some people tough. They actually played Arkansas pretty tough in the early season. They went to Rupp Arena. And the thing with Iowa State that's worth noting, Keyshawn Gilbert, one of their star players, is out for the NCAA tournament with a groin injury. Conveniently announced shortly after the NCAA tournament reveal show, Iowa State gets the 3. This is not the game where I'm worried about Iowa State. And we'll talk about Iowa State here in a minute because I don't know that I'm terribly worried about them even if they did it. Let me put it this way. I don't think that I'm terribly, terribly worried about them overall. So I have Iowa State winning this game. So we will set up a 3-6 matchup in the second round. We'll get to that momentarily. Bottom half of the bracket, I have picked nothing but chalk so far. 7-10 matchup, Marquette versus New Mexico. Let's go a little anti-chalk here, and let's go ahead and take the New Mexico Lobos to win this game. Listen, Marquette, first of all, great matchup. Battle of guards. Cam Jones for Marquette was playing like a first-team All-American. Donovan Dent, I told you a few days ago. Donovan Dent, you talk about guys that could end up as breakout stars of the NCAA tournament. There's always that small to mid-major kind of school guy. Donovan Dent averages 20 and almost 7 assists per game and can take over games as a 5'11 guard. This kid could play anywhere in college basketball, okay? Could have entered the portal last year, could be playing at a high major, decides to come back to New Mexico. If Richard Pitino leaves, I think he decides to leave with him, I think he could instantly become one of the best players in the portal. This is, of course, Donovan Dent that I'm talking about. Just an absolute stud of a player for the New Mexico Lobos, okay? So I bring it up because I think New Mexico is just frankly better than people realize. Just a team that I know they did not win in the Mountain West tournament, but overall they finished 26-7. They won the Mountain West regular season. Remember, that's a 20-game league schedule as well. That's a little bit of a grind. And Donovan Dent is a guy that can absolutely take over things in college basketball. 20 points, 6.5 assists. Marquette, by the way, it is worth noting, just did not play great down the stretch. Lost 6 of their last 10, including the Big East tournament. Now, it's worth noting 3 of those losses, including the Big East tournament, were to St. John's. 2 were to UConn. Doesn't change the fact that they were not great down the stretch. Just something hasn't been right with Marquette all year. I like New Mexico to win that game. Michigan State versus Bryant. Love Bryant Bulldogs. Rhode Island, great school, great spot, whatever. They ain't beating Michigan State. Michigan State wins in the bottom half of the bracket. So the only real non-chalk pick is New Mexico over Marquette in the round of 64. Let's get back to the top of the bracket. Obviously, we can't fill this in real time, so I do apologize. Auburn versus Louisville. Listen, this is the game that we have talked about. I've talked about since Sunday night. I think Auburn got railroaded by getting this game, by having to face Louisville in the round of 32 in Lexington, in Rupp Arena. I know you could say, oh, it's Kentucky territory. No. I've said it a million times all week. It is a 45-minute to an hour drive for Louisville fans. They will pack Rupp Arena. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a true road environment. Good news, I guess, for Auburn is they already won at Rupp Arena once this year to clinch the SEC regular season title. I know that Auburn is struggling. I am still going to take them to win. Listen, Louisville's going to give them a game. I don't know what the spread's going to be. If it's under Louisville +5, I would take Louisville to cover. But I do think that Auburn's size is just going to be too much. Louisville, if you remember, one of the incredible things, why I had Pat Kelsey as my runner-up for National Coach of the Year is because of the fact all the big guys got hurt. Kayshawn Pryor got hurt early in the season in the Bahamas, the battle for Atlantis. Ali Khalifa, remember that name, had to redshirt this year because of injuries, played for Mark Pope at BYU 2 years ago. I just don't know that they have enough size for Janai Broome, Dylan Cardwell, and it's going to be a valiant effort. And would it stun me if Louisville pulled off the upset here? It would not, but I just think too much size, too much physicality for Auburn. Listen, I know Auburn has lost 3 of 4. I think you could also talk about the games themselves. You lose at the buzzer to Alabama. You lose to a Tennessee team that matches up so well with you. They almost beat Auburn in the jungle when Auburn was playing at its best. And then, oh, by the way, you lose at Texas A&M in a game that they desperately needed. I am not as worried about the Auburn losing streak as most others. I do have Auburn winning the opening game in the round of 32 in this region. Michigan versus A&M. I don't want to say it's a game only your mother could love because Michigan is actually a little bit fun to watch, shoot a lot of threes. Dusty May is a really good coach. I actually do like A&M here. It's going to sound crazy. A&M's a weird team. Like A&M, they're very limited in what they can do, but they do it very well. There's also seems to be, for all intents and purposes, Buzz Williams is trying to find literally any other job that he can get. I think he's done at A&M after this year. We've talked about it on the show before. He wants to be somewhere else. He's a guy that moves around every 4 or 5 years. And so I just bring it up because, listen, I think there's a scenario where Texas A&M is flat. They've been kind of up and down all year. They lost their SEC tournament opener. Does Buzz Williams have one foot out the door? But I think it's a good matchup for them. Michigan is a very skilled team. I don't know how physical they are, though, right? I mean, think about who is the team that you would say in the Big Ten plays most like Texas A&M? Michigan State, probably, right? Michigan State beat the crap out of Michigan twice. I like Texas A&M, the Aggies, to make it to the Sweet 16 in this game. Give me Texas A&M. Bottom half of the bracket, Ole Miss versus Iowa State. So I really went back and forth on this game, okay? And let me tell you why. Iowa State, I think, listen, everybody's freaking out about the injuries, and I get it. We also need to remember, Iowa State is a team that put up 92 points the last time they took the court without Keyshawn Gilbert in the Big 12 tournament against BYU. So my heart tells me that Iowa State will be okay, but my head tells me they have a lot of injuries. And the thing about Ole Miss, I mentioned Sean Padula, not Sean Paduler, Sean Padula a minute ago. He's a guy, 5'10", let's just call it what it is. He's a 5'0" without an ounce of athletic ability, and he just cooks dudes, okay? And I think without Keyshawn Gilbert, I think he is able to do what he needs to do. Now, Curtis Jones has been unbelievable stepping in in spots for Iowa State. I think he had, 24 in the first half against BYU in that game. But I was also thinking about this with Iowa State. You know what Iowa State kind of reminds me of? They have a little bit of Kentucky vibes from the perspective of it just seems like all season long, just things haven't totally gone right. Things are up, things are down, things are this, things are that, whatever. And I just do wonder, is this a scenario where maybe just they kind of peaked as a team because of the fact that yet again, I just don't know that they have enough bodies. And let me put it this way. It just doesn't feel like their quote unquote season. Just feels like a year where every 2 weeks they have to shake up the lineup. Every 2 weeks somebody is in. Every 2 weeks somebody else is out. And Ole Miss, listen, they're limited, but this is a team that beat Arkansas in the opening round of the SEC tournament. Easily could have beaten Auburn in round 2. I think they're playing good basketball. I think Ole Miss isn't the best team I've ever seen, but I think they get the win here. So we now have in this bracket 3 SEC teams in the Sweet 16. Another game that I really went back and forth on, New Mexico versus Michigan State. New Mexico, those guards are awesome. I mentioned Donovan Dent, 20 points, 7 assists per game, and I've mentioned throughout the week, New Mexico has a bunch of high major guys. C.J. Noland began his career at Oklahoma. Babracharin began his career at Arizona. Nelly Jr. Joseph played for Rick Pitino. My problem and my concern with New Mexico, I just don't know that they have enough size for Michigan State. Listen, we could keep making fun of Michigan State and how limited they are offensively. They rebound. Tom Izzo is a March coach. He has success. He always has his team ready to go. The other thing is you're betting against history, right? New Mexico has never made a Sweet 16 in school history. I don't know that they upset Michigan State to do it. I think they're capable, but I like Michigan State to advance. So I have Auburn versus Texas A&M. I have Ole Miss versus Michigan State in the Sweet 16. And as we mentioned the other day, producer Matt has New Mexico going to at least the Sweet 16. So if New Mexico makes a run, we can come back on Monday's show and say producer Matt believed even when Torres did not help. So producer Matt loves the New Mexico Lobos. I cannot say the same. He actually has them in the Elite Eight. Auburn versus Texas A&M in the Sweet 16. Listen, I know Auburn just lost at A&M. I think this is where the run ends. By the way, if you are going to the Sweet 16 games, reminder, SeatGeek, promo code Torres, you get $20 off tickets on your first purchase. SeatGeek, promo code Torres. Just had somebody DM me literally during the show asking for more details. Those are the details. That's all you need to do. Purchase your tickets, first-time purchase, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. It's that simple. So Auburn versus A&M in Atlanta. A lot of Auburn fans. By the way, producer Matt, keep a note to yourself. If Auburn does advance to Atlanta, we're going to be pumping out that SeatGeek promo from our Torres on Auburn page pretty much nonstop over the next week or so. Okay, so Auburn versus A&M. I know that Auburn lost to A&M a few weeks ago. It's easy to forget the context there. Auburn had just wrapped the SEC regular season title. They played at Kentucky on Saturday, fly home. They find out that they win the SEC outright when Tennessee beats Alabama at the buzzer that day. They're excited. Probably had some fun down there at Toomer's Corner over the next couple hours. Had to fly back out 2 days later, go to Texas A&M. Texas A&M at that point was on a 4-game losing streak. Listen, I don't think Texas A&M is going 2 for 2. I just think it was a one-off moment for Texas A&M. Thought it was a situation where things broke nicely for them. Don't have Texas A&M beating an Auburn. The second time, I have Auburn in the Elite Eight in Atlanta, where they will face the Michigan State Spartans, who will, of course, be facing in my bracket the Ole Miss Rebels. Ole Miss, another great story. But listen, let's just call it what it is. They kind of play the same way. Michigan State, I think, is just a better team. You look at some of their guys. The thing about Michigan State is they're probably a little bit more athletic than they've been. Cohen Carr is a beast. Why am I blanking on his name? Richardson is a beast, obviously Jason Richardson's son. And I would just like that matchup. I think, there's a certain type of team that's going to beat Michigan State. I don't think that Ole Miss is it. So I have a 1 versus 2, super boring, I know, and I have Michigan State against Auburn. I have the Auburn Tigers beating Michigan State to go to the Final Four. Again, football on hardwood, all that good stuff. I get it. Auburn's just bigger. They're just more athletic. They shoot the ball better. Again, I said it with Michigan State, Ole Miss a second ago. Auburn, to me, is just a better version of Michigan State. Michigan State, to me, is a better version of Ole Miss, and Auburn is a better version of Michigan State. So I think Auburn gets right. I'll say this, and I've said it throughout the week. This isn't some hot take that I'm dropping here on a Tuesday night as we reveal the bracket. I truly believe, in my heart of hearts, that the toughest game in Auburn's region for Auburn will be Louisville in the round of 32. Pat Kelsey is a beast. Pat Kelsey is unafraid. Louisville really probably should have been about a 6 seed, not an 8 seed, maybe even a 5 seed. And they're unafraid. I do think they have too much and they will get by Louisville, but Louisville in Rupp Arena, that's where it could get crazy. That's where I think Auburn does get tripped up. But I do have Auburn surviving that game, and I think the matchups from there actually work out well for them. Give me Auburn to the Final Four. So one region is set. We will come back. We will talk about the West region. Arkansas Razorbacks, Kansas Jayhawks. We'll talk about that. Arkansas versus St. John's. We'll talk about that. But the real question is anybody beating the Florida Gators? We'll take a quick break, come back. West Regional when we're back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what. Do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more. All available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. Give me 1/2 second here. Got to do something real quick. Hold on. All right. Let me do that over for editing purposes. Let's do it all over again. 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. So do want to go ahead and switch gears, get to the West Regional here in just a moment. Before we do, though, we have so many great partners this March. We love working with everybody, but you know who we have an especially soft spot for in our hearts? Our friends, our partners. Yeah, we're talking BetUSTV. Okay, so BetUSTV, we've talked about them all March long. We've talked about them last March. BetUSTV took us to the Final Four last year in Phoenix. They're taking us to the Final Four again in San Antonio. Just an amazing partner, an amazing group, amazing people, and just the best place for not only March Madness coverage, but coverage of pretty much everything. It's that time of year. We got March Madness for sure, but we got Major League Baseball. We got, baseball literally just started with the Cubs and Dodgers, on Tuesday night in Tokyo or Tuesday, wherever. It started in Tokyo. I know that. We also have NBA. We have NHL. And wall-to-wall coverage, BetUSTV. They do an incredible job covering all these sports, all different angles. The college basketball crew with my boy Corby, with Jeff Nadeau, formerly of Barstool. Like, they do an awesome job covering college basketball. So for all your college basketball coverage, go to BetUSTV.com. And oh, by the way, we appreciate their support because, again, BetUSTV is taking us to San Antonio. With that said, one team from the West is going to San Antonio, and what a freaking bracket this is. Okay, so you don't need to tell me, but you don't need me to tell you, but the West region is just insane. Number 1 seed Florida seems to be the pick that everyone is making right now. St. John's is there. Of course, we have Texas Tech, who's kind of a sleeper. And oh, by the way, we also have the most intriguing game of round 1, Kansas and Arkansas. I think we got some interesting upset potential. Oh, and there's the 2-time national champion UConn Huskies as well. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's go ahead and talk about it. And let's start with the first game, Florida versus Norfolk State. This is no disrespect to Norfolk State, but yeah, if you want some analysis on Norfolk State, you got to go somewhere else because Florida's beating them by 1 million. On to the next game, which is the 8-9 game, UConn versus Oklahoma. Okay. So I would say out of every game in the NCAA tournament round 1, outside of Arkansas and Kansas, I've probably gotten asked more about UConn versus Oklahoma, the 8-9 game here. I'll be real. Listen, I think it'd be easy to make the argument, UConn, it's March. And listen, if you've been listening to this show, sometimes this is what I'll say. Fan bases of individual teams know their teams better than anyone else, okay? And, my UConn people, I'll give them credit, is that I think there were some moments, especially, one, certainly before New Year's, before Big East play when the team was healthy, post Maui until literally New Year's Day when Liam McNeely got hurt, that you felt like, okay, this team is figuring it out. But throughout most of Big East play, it's been up and down and up and down and up and down. I just don't like the vibes going into the weekend. And so listen, I think Dan Hurley is a great coach. I don't think this is about him. I just think the team, something hasn't been right all year. We've analyzed it and overanalyzed it. Alex Caravan saying on multiple occasions, the coaches are putting us in position to win and we're just not executing. We're not showing up ready to play. Injuries have been an issue. Liam McNeely in and out of the lineup. Hassan Diarra just playing on one leg. That kid is such a freaking warrior, playing hard every game. And I will say, I think the path to UConn winning, Diarra has to slow down Jeremiah Fears. The interesting matchup there, of course, is Diarra is a 6th-year senior who just turned 24 years old. Jeremiah Fears reclassed into 2024, the recruiting class, and is one of the youngest players in college basketball. But Fears is a beast. Oklahoma, remember, listen, I'll say this for Oklahoma. Like, I've been critical of them, but they've actually played pretty well here over the last couple weeks, okay? So they Mississippi State at home. They then basically proceed to lose back-to-back games at the buzzer to Kentucky and Ole Miss. They then win their final 2 regular season games, Missouri and at Texas. They win the opener against Georgia. And listen, I'm not going to lie, like they shouldn't have. Kentucky nearly blew the game. Kentucky was in control. But, I mean, you're talking about a team that easily could have been on a 6-game winning streak going into the Kentucky game in the SEC tournament. I've said it a million times. Ever since Porter Moser lost the quarter zip and went to the Olive Garden maitre d' look, they've been basically unbeatable, okay? And so the black suit coat, the black shirt, the black tie, he's rocking. I think Oklahoma wins this game. I just think for UConn, I think Danny Hurley said it. Dan Hurley said it on 60 Minutes. Half the team is already thinking about the portal. I haven't heard this, but it's just speculation on my part. I'm guessing some of the coaching staff is starting to more worried about who's in the portal and pushing kids into the portal than they are about, winning game. They want to win. But I think everybody's just ready for this season to end. It hasn't gone well. I like Oklahoma to beat UConn in the round of 32 or in the round of 64. Let's keep it going. Memphis, Colorado State is a very trendy 5-12 upset. Colorado State is actually favored in this game, and it's with good reason. Colorado State's won 10 in a row, 15-2 in their last 17, won the Mountain West Conference tournament. I'll be real, though. I think people are totally undervaluing Memphis and how good they are. Now, listen, I understand. It's worth noting with Memphis, their starting point guard, Tyrese Hunter, suffered some sort of foot injury at the AAC tournament, did not play in the final 2 games, was in a boot. I saw John Rothstein report that, no status update there. No status update means he probably ain't playing, okay? But I just bring it up to very simply say that when you look at that team, I understand that you don't have Tyrese Hunter. I actually thought the last 2 games without Tyrese Hunter, it would have been easy to just roll over and quit. And instead, they won back-to-back games in the conference tournament when, remember, the 2 teams that they were playing for their tournament lives. There is no multiple bids in that league if Memphis wins the league. And so to play the 2 of the 3 best teams in the league with their seasons on the line and still win without your starting point guard, I think that's pretty good. Couple other things on Memphis. One, can we stop with the idea, they play down to their competition? No, they don't. Like, I've seen a lot of, they've been up and down all year. No, they haven't. They were amazing in the out of conference. Then they went 16-2 in a league where they are the biggest game on everybody's schedule. I think they actually played up to their competition. And let's remember what they did in the out of conference. Won at Clemson. No, who didn't win at Clemson? Duke didn't win at Clemson. Kentucky didn't win at Clemson. Beat Missouri, beat Ole Miss, beat Michigan State, beat UConn. Memphis is a really good team. Now, there's a ceiling to what they can do if Tyrese Hunter doesn't come back. We'll get to that in a minute. But I think especially down low, Dane Danger, if you remember him from the Baylor and Illinois days, is at Memphis, as is Musa Cisse, the rare transfer who started at Memphis, transferred out. I believe he played at 2 other schools and now is back at Memphis. So a full circle moment for him. I think Memphis beats Colorado State. I don't see that as a 5-12 upset. Let's keep it going, staying in that region. The 4-13 game, Maryland versus Grand Canyon. Listen, Maryland, Grand Canyon's awesome, right? Grand Canyon, if you remember last year, beat St. Mary's in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. I don't think this is the same team. Maryland has been really good all year. Maryland, remember, they were a buzzer beater away from playing for the conference championship. Michigan basically won at the buzzer. The 2 big guys, Derek Queen, Julian Reese, who, of course, is Angel Reese's brother. I just think they got it 2 figured out. I think they're too big down low. I like Maryland to win that game rather convincingly. Missouri versus Drake. This is one I had pegged the second that the bracket came out. And the thing about Torres, if you listen to this show, I'm not somebody that says 2 months before the bracket comes out, this team is going to be, because I don't like doing this team's going to pull off an upset, because you just don't know what the bracket is going to look like, and you don't know what the matchups are going to be. And so for me, I was hesitant to put Drake too far, but a couple things stand out. One, first off, Drake's players got to feel good because Darian DeVries, the Indiana coach, so that's one less job they got to worry about their coach leaving for. But 2, I just like the matchup for Drake. Okay, Drake isn't very big, but neither is Missouri, and we've talked about Missouri. What Missouri does really well, Missouri forces a lot of turnovers. If you don't come out ready to play, they're going to turn you over. They're going to get fast break points, and we've seen a couple games this year. Remember when they played Arkansas the first time and they were up like 19-2 against Arkansas? Remember when they played Alabama at home and they were up like 19-2 against Alabama? If you don't come out ready to play, they're going to run you out of the gym. But Drake won. Listen, I think Drake will deal with a little bit of the athleticism early, but Drake, they don't turn the ball over. Top 50 in fewest turnovers in college basketball. They take care of the basketball. They rebound well for a team their size. They obviously shoot the three ball well. And I think the big thing for me is that they play really slow. So Missouri is not going to get those fast break points. On top of not getting their fast break points, the other variable is that you get Missouri in the half court. I think that's where Drake controls the game. So I actually do like Drake to pull off the upset, the 11-6. I just like the matchup for them. I wasn't going to blind pick them in the NCAA tournament, but I do like Drake to win this game. 3-14 matchup, Texas Tech versus UNC Wilmington. Listen, I could spend all day talking about this game, but Texas Tech is going to win and win convincingly. So with that, sorry, Texas Tech fans, if you were waiting for the extensive breakdown. But let's get to the game everybody wants to talk about. The bottom quarter of this bracket, 7 versus 10, Kansas versus Arkansas. Couple things here. One, first of all, let me take a quick swig of water. So first of all, we need to talk about Arkansas from the perspective of Boogie Flan. That does worry me a little bit. Listen, I understand that when you have Arkansas is basically down to 6 healthy players, or they were by the end of the SEC tournament. Big Z hurt his wrist. Boogie Flan and Adu Thero were out with an injury, okay? So if you can just get a healthy body, that's fine. But I just think that team was playing with so much confidence, that group. And I'm just curious what Coach Cal does with Boogie Flan. I'm assuming he's going to come off the bench, but is it going to be 15 minutes off the bench? Is it going to be 32 minutes off the bench? How does it impact DJ Wagner? How does it impact Nelly Davis? Because those guys are playing so much better without Boogie Flan. With that said, I understand that you think you know where this is going. I'm going to take Arkansas to beat Kansas. Bottom line to me, Kansas hasn't been right all year, okay? And you know, just when you thought the last week of the season they're turning a corner, they play Houston tough, they beat Arizona at home on senior night, then you know what happens? They then proceed to go to the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City, where 99% of the people in the building are their fans, and they need overtime to beat UCF, and then they lose to Arizona in a game where Arizona punked them. There's something not right. I don't know if it's Bill Self. I don't know if it's Hunter Dickinson. I don't know if it's some of the other transfers that just haven't clicked. I know Bill Self generally is pretty good in these. Bill Self in the tournament, let me put it this way. If you go back and look, historically, he's really good in games that open a weekend. Doesn't lose often in the round of 64, doesn't lose often in the Sweet 16. Most of his losses historically have been either in the round of 32 or in the Elite Eight, that short turnaround. For years, remember, he kept losing in the Elite Eight, couldn't get over the hump. I just bring it up because Bill Self is usually good in a tournament opener. Something's been off with that Kansas team all year. Arkansas, I wish I knew more about Big Z. Wish I knew more about the plan for Boogie Flan, but you can't deny they were playing phenomenal basketball at the end of the season. I have Arkansas beating Kansas in the round of 64. St. John's, they are opening the NCAA tournament with Omaha. As John Rothstein likes to say, Omaha somewhere in the middle of nowhere. They're going home to the middle of nowhere because this one's going to be over soon. Spoiler alert, I try not to give away my picks here, but the Aaron Torres pod survivor pool, St. John's is probably going to be my pick in the first game because there's no scenario to me that they lose. And I think Arkansas, as we'll get to in a minute, is an interesting matchup for them. But I do have St. John's winning that game convincingly. Top part of the bracket, Florida versus Oklahoma. Sorry to Gators fans. I'm not giving the team the love that they deserve. They beat Oklahoma by 22. Oklahoma's not beating them. They're just not. Florida, I think Florida is playing better than anyone coming into this tournament. Doesn't mean I think they're going to win it necessarily, but they're playing better than anybody. Beat Oklahoma by 22 a few weeks ago. I think they win this game. I'll say this. Memphis, Maryland, very interesting. But, two teams, first of all, that both play multiple bigs, which is interesting. In this era, you don't see a lot of teams that play two bigs sometimes at the same time. Memphis with Dane Danger and Moussa Cisse. Maryland with Julian Reese and Derek Queen. So it's going to be interesting. Guard play is equal. You wish we had more information on Tyrese Hunter. I could see Maryland winning here, but I'm going to take Memphis to pull off the upset. Again, I know it's the AAC. I know it was Tulane and UAB. But the resilience that team showed to win those 2 games without their starting point guard, I just don't think people give him enough credit. PJ Haggerty, one of the leading scorers in college basketball. I think he could cook. I think he could go off. I actually have Memphis, first time in the Penny Hardaway era, advancing to the second weekend. Wish we had more details on Tyrese Hunter. Doesn't matter. I like them to win. Bottom half of the bracket, Drake versus Texas Tech. Texas Tech's another one. Texas Tech and Florida fans need to create a support group because I'm just not talking about their teams at all. Texas Tech is awesome. Drake, listen, Drake is a great story, but Texas Tech shoots the 3 ball just as well. And oh, by the way, they take care of the basketball. They're big. They're athletic. JT Toppin was the Big 12 Player of the Year. And I think that size down low, Darian Williams, we assume is going to be back in this game. He's been kind of banged up, missed some time in the Big 12 tournament, but he played in the opener of the Big 12 tournament as well. I think Texas Tech gets the win, cruises. I mean, we don't have lines yet for the round of 32. That game feels like Texas Tech, I think if they play Drake, I think Texas Tech wins by 15 plus. Now, let's get to the bottom part of the bracket. This game, and I think people are going to make fun of me and they're going to say that I'm just, a cow, whatever. I had a lot of trouble with this game, and let me explain why. First of all, I'll say this, and I said this on Sunday's show. St. John's fans got mad at me. I do believe that Rick Pitino, if there was one guy that he did not want to see in this NCAA tournament this year, it was John Calipari. Because just think about Rick Pitino, okay? He has this complete revival of his character, complete revival of his career. Listen, it's easy to forget. Way it ended at Louisville was not good. And I care. I'm over it. He paid players. I don't care. Even the stripper stuff, and yes, there were strippers. Sorry for anyone listening with kids, but that happened. It was weird. I've moved on. He's a great coach. I've argued that he's one of the greats to ever do it. What I will also say, Calipari kind of had his number at Kentucky. And so if I'm going to call Rick Pitino the greatest coach maybe to ever coach college basketball, which I think that he is, Calipari owned him for a big chunk of his career. The other thing I was thinking about is that St. John's, what they do, they are such a bully defensively, okay? And when you look at St. John's, what stands out to me is that I think there's a 99% of teams in college basketball are going to struggle facing St. John's. They're so physical. They're so tough. Everyone compares them to the Legion of Boom in football. They just hold, beat you up. And that's a great defensive game plan against UConn, against Marquette, against Creighton, against whoever. But Arkansas, listen, I'm not a scheme guy, but what's the complaint about Coach Cal? Offense isn't modern. Offense is dribble handoff, get the ball to your playmakers, get them downhill, get them to the rim, have them put it on the rim. You either get fouled or you offensive rebound. That's like the perfect game plan to try and beat St. John's. And so to me, I think this is going to be a much more competitive game than I think a lot of people do. I will take St. John's, though. Listen, it's not a Pitino versus Calipari thing. I think Arkansas can win. I truly do. But the Boogie Flan curveball to me is just weird. And St. John's is just the kind of team that wears teams down. And when you're talking about an Arkansas team that, again, will maybe have 8 healthy players, we'll see what the status of Big Z is. I just don't know. The other thing is, I think Arkansas's guards, I don't think match up well with the size of St. John's guards. Kadari Richmond, Aaron Scott, who's kind of more of a wing, but you get the point. Simeon Wilcher. I like St. John's to win, to advance to the Sweet 16. All right, top part of the bracket. Again, a lot of chalk. Florida versus Memphis. Florida Gators fans, again, I apologize. You're gonna beat Memphis because at some point, if Memphis does not have their starting point guard, it is going to catch up with them. And Tyrese Hunter, we don't know if he's going to play. We don't know if he's going to be 100%, all of that. But the other variable with Tyrese Hunter that we have to remember is also this. Even if he comes back, he's going to be less than 100%. And I think this is the game where the size of Memphis is not a variable. Florida, like Texas, they're a great offensive rebounding team. Condon, Hanlogton is back. Thomas Hawk is a beast on the boards. Ruben Chinyelu. And so Memphis, I think the dream ends for the Tigers in San Francisco against the Florida Gators. I don't see them losing to Florida. Let's keep it going. Bottom half of the bracket. I will tell you, and I sincerely mean this. I genuinely mean this. I had more trouble with Texas Tech versus St. John's than any single game in this bracket, okay? Texas Tech, St. John's, very similar, tough, physical, athletic. Both teams, they have a 7-footer that they don't really play. Iwachukwu at St. John's, Federico for Texas Tech. Texas Tech shoots the 3 ball a little bit better, but I was thinking about this. Texas Tech can get really hot from 3, but they get really cold as well. I mean, go back to that game at Fog Allen. What did they make? 13 threes in the first half of that game, something like that. Then they make 2 or 3 in the second half. Kansas comes all the way back. And so with St. John's, it's cliche. I think they're a little bit of an inevitability, though. They're going to wear you down. They're going to beat you up. And to be clear, I know Texas Tech dealt with physical teams in the Big 12, Iowa State, Houston, etc. But I just look at, if you're a streaky three-point shooting team, and I know statistically Texas Tech just looks like a great three-point shooting team, every time I watch them, they get ice cold at various points. You can't do that against St. John's. They're eventually going to overwhelm you. I went back and forth on this one. I do have St. John's winning, which leads us to the Elite Eight. And what a matchup that would be. 37-year-old Todd Golden, 38-year-old Todd Golden versus 72-year-old Rick Pitino going on 73. Todd Golden, I got to give him so much credit. He is a guy that has put together, just an absolute monster of a team. I doubt, listen, if you listen to this show, if like you're an OG listener, I had major doubts about could Todd Golden put together a team in the SEC that was capable of competing with the big boys, capable of competing with Rick Barnes, capable of competing with Nate Oates and all these guys. Yeah, he has done it, okay? And I do think Florida is the best team coming into this tournament. But what I'll also say is that to me, there are a couple variables that need to be discussed here with Florida as well. One, it is worth noting, unless I miss something, Todd Golden's never won an NCAA tournament game. So even when he got the best team in the country, or the team that's maybe playing best in the country, never won a tournament game. It would concern me a little bit to just pick him to go to the Final Four, pick him to win a national title. 2, again, I worry about a team. I know they shoot the 3 ball well, but I also think that, I don't know. I just think there's something about St. John's. I actually do have St. John's winning this region to go to the Final Four. St. John's over Florida. The other thing with Florida too, and this isn't any analytic, I don't know that I've seen anyone pick anyone other than Florida to win the national championship. And I understand why. They're awesome, okay? Florida is unbelievable as a team. But at the same time, man, ESPN, every single person picked Florida. The casuals who start watching college basketball on Champ Week pick Florida. The guys that know this stuff inside out, I kind of turned on a bracketology show on Monday night. Sean Farnham, who's as good as anybody in this sport, pick Florida. Dallin Cuff, who's as good as anybody, pick Florida. Everybody's picking Florida. When everybody picks the same team, it ain't going to happen. I've used this example before. I was at UConn in 2006. Rudy Gay, Josh Boone, Denham Brown, number 1 team in the country. Everybody picked UConn to win the national championship. And as soon as that happened, I said, they're not winning it. And it was sad when they lost to George Mason in the Elite Eight, but they did. I have St. John's going to the Final Four out of the West. St. John's and Auburn, half of the bracket done. Cannot believe we are at the halfway point. We have only talked about half this bracket. But listen, if there's ever a time to just talk and chat, we're going to go ahead and do it. This is what we'll do. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We will look at the other half of the bracket starting in the East region with the Duke Blue Devils, number 1 overall seed. Quick break. Be right back. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. Look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Firebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, These jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to fioboc.com. That's FIOBOC. Fioboc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We will also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Fioboc. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at FIOBOC. Thank you to Fioboc. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres20 for 20% off. All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. Good to be back. I don't know what this means. Nobody says, Matt, you need to edit Torres' Final Four. I see where it's headed. Where is it headed? Pearl and Patino so far. What's wrong? It sounds like a really bad law firm. Sounds like a law firm that you don't want to hire. Oh, we hired Pearl and Patino. Yeah, you're going to jail for a long time. Anyway, let's see here really quick. There was one other thing. Oh, you're going crazy for the Collie Puffs in the chat. Producer Matt, you could clip off all of that. Speaking of which, we got to talk Collie Puffs. So it's March. You're watching all sorts of college hoops over the course of the month of March. You were watching Champ Week. You guys are cracking me up in the chat with all so many comments about the Collie Puffs. Okay, Collie Puffs. It's March. You're on the couch. Nobody is in his underwear, apparently. I assume it's a guy. Nobody. I love you, buddy. It's March. You're in your underwear, apparently, and you need a snack that is healthy and delicious while your bracket blows up. Well, people, that's where Collie Puffs comes in, okay? So we've talked about Collie Puffs since the start of football season. Incredible snack. First of all, family-owned company. You want to support small local businesses? Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge football fan. By the way, he's going to be in our Survivor pool. So unrelated, make sure to sign up for the Survivor pool. Link is at the top of the show description. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Collie Puffs, okay? So family-owned company. Joey's a huge football fan. He's sitting on his couch, and he's sitting there saying, you know what? I need to create a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something that my kids will like, something that I will like as well. And he came up with Collie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is they taste freaking delicious, okay? You don't need to take my word for it. Take nobody's word for it. Take UK's Till I Die's word for it. Just an incredible snack and incredibly healthy, and that's the best part. Like I said, baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but the best part is they taste freaking delicious, okay? So for more information, I need you to go to colliepuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com. Colliepuffs.com. Colliepuffs.com. You could also get them on Amazon.com. Amazon.com. Just search Collie Puffs on Amazon.com. I can't even get through this read. Producer Matt, you can also clip off the part where nobody said I don't need Cheeto dust on my junk. Because that might be the number one ad for Collie Puffs of all time. I'm sending it to Joey and his brother who run that company as soon as the show goes final. Colliepuffs.com. As nobody says, the alternative is you have Cheeto dust on your junk. You don't want that, so get Collie Puffs, colliepuffs.com. Also on Amazon.com as well. All right, I got to collect myself here. All right. East region. Let's get to the East region. Presented by Collie Puffs. Presented by Nobody's Junk. Yeah, I'm totally off the rails right now. East region. Duke's number 1 seed. Everyone says Cooper Flagg is playing. I think they'll survive the opening round against a team that will be playing their opening game on Wednesday. We can go a little bit faster here. Duke wins that game. Mississippi State versus Baylor. You know, Baylor, listen to me, all year long, Baylor's been up and down. Something, I don't want to say hasn't felt right, but I mean, this is a team that's 19-14, okay? This is a team that in their final, their final 2, they lost 5 of their final 8 games. Not exactly a sprint to the finish line here. That included an ugly loss to Colorado, who finished 16th out of 16 teams. Cincinnati, about 13th out of 16 teams. They do beat Kansas State in the opening round of the Big 12 tournament. I just don't think they're very good. Mississippi State was not great down the stretch either, but they're athletic. Josh Hubbard, I know VJ Edge can take over a game, but Josh Hubbard can take over a game as well. I like Mississippi State to win this game. Oregon versus Liberty. So I'll tell you what, I have not picked a 5-12 upset yet, and this to me feels like the spot. Oregon, I'll be real, I know they're playing pretty well coming into this thing. They had won about 8 straight games coming into the Big Ten tournament. Well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coming into the Big Ten tournament. They beat Indiana to open the Big Ten tournament. They lose to Michigan State. I don't know. There's something about Oregon all year that just, it's a little bit underwhelmed me. Okay. And so now you're talking about an Oregon team that is facing a Liberty team that won, obviously a ton of NCAA tournament experience for that Liberty program. Liberty, I think the other thing too, one of the best 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. 39% as a team. They attempted close to 1,000 3-pointers. So you can't sit there and say they attempted none. 39% from 3. And again, I it's November or it's March, and I don't know what Oregon is. They play through Nathan Biddle sometimes. Sometimes it's Jackson Shelstead. Sometimes it's this. Sometimes it's that. They're up and down. They don't shoot the 3 ball well. They're not a great rebounding team considering their size. I've been waiting to be impressed by Oregon all year, and that sounds crazy because they have some great wins. They beat Alabama early in the season. They beat Texas A&M early in the season. But again, this was a team that was 12-8 in Big Ten play. I just think they're kind of whatever. I'm going to take Oregon to win. Arizona versus Akron. Interesting game. Tommy Lloyd, obviously, has not had a ton of tournament success. Now, that's tough to say because he's made 2 Elite Eights. But remember, last year they're in LA. They're facing Clemson as I think a 2 or a 3 seed, and you think the path is there for them to go to a Final Four. They end up losing that game. Obviously, his first year, they're a number 1 seed. They lose to Houston in the Sweet 16, and then the loss to Princeton in 2023. So, there's a little bit of a history here. Akron, of course, is one of the highest scoring teams. We talked about John Groce. He's been around forever, was at Illinois for a minute. Now he's at Akron. Beat his half-brother, Travis Steele, in the conference tournament championship game. I'll tell you what, though, I do like Arizona to win this game. First of all, Arizona, I think you could sit there and say, even Arizona fans are like, we're struggling a little bit. Well, Arizona, yes, they're 11-6 in their last 17 games. 2 of those losses are to Houston. 1 was to BYU in a game that could have gone either way. 2 of them were to Houston. 1 was a loss at Iowa State. 1 was a loss at Kansas. The BYU game could have gone either way. And they played really well against Houston in that conference tournament championship game. So I think they're playing really well. I like Arizona to beat Akron, advance to the round of 32. BYU versus VCU. I said it on Sunday. I actually like the draw for the Cougs. Listen, I know I've been a little Cougar crazy on this show, which, I guess there's worse things to be than Cougar crazy, if you know what I'm saying. Well, I'm married, so it's not good to be Cougar crazy. But Cougar crazy is okay if you're single. It's okay if you're a BYU fan. It's okay if you're a Houston fan. But I just bring it up because when I look at this game for BYU, I think it's a good matchup. First of all, I mentioned this a minute ago, or I mentioned this on Sunday, but BYU, let's not forget, hasn't played since Friday. So they got some time off. I think what's also worth noting, VCU had to win back-to-back high leverage games in the A10 tournament just to advance to the NCAA tournament. So VCU's 2 biggest games were on Saturday and Sunday. They then had to drive back to campus, fly out on Tuesday. They're playing at altitude. BYU is going to have a significant home court advantage. And I'll just be real. It's just one of those things where, when I look at BYU, I just think it's a game where I've said it all week. BYU's just better than them. The other thing with BYU, Kevin Young's never coached in an NCAA tournament game, but 4 of their veterans were on last year's team that lost in the opener, ironically, to the A10 champion. Remember, last year, Mark Pope's final season at BYU, Richie Saunders, Dallin Hall, Fus Traore, and the 4th guy, Trevin Nell. They all played in that NCAA tournament loss. I think they want to win. I believe they do. I believe they go ahead and take care of business against VCU. Let's keep it going beyond them. And outside of VCU, Wisconsin, Montana. Listen, Montana had a couple late night games during champ week, watched them throughout the week. I don't know how to say this. They're slow and unathletic. Good for their league. I just don't think they're good enough. I think Wisconsin rolls. I haven't made any best bets for the opening round. I would take Wisconsin to win by 10 plus in that game. VCU or St. Mary's, versus Vandy. Vandy, listen, great story, overachieved, struggled down the stretch. St. Mary's has a legitimate 7-footer in Mitchell Saxon. They got a little bit more scoring, freshman named Mikey Lewis. I think Vanderbilt actually gets rolled here pretty good. I think St. Mary's takes care of business. Alabama versus Robert Morris. I saw Robert Morris's coach basically say, yeah, they're better than us and bigger and stronger than us. We're going to need a miracle. So I'll take his word for it. Alabama rolls in that one. Back to the top of the bracket, Duke versus Mississippi State. I'll tell you what, I think this could get a little interesting, okay? Duke, one, we just don't know the status of Cooper Flagg, okay? But at the same time, what's also worth noting on Duke, on Cooper Flagg, is even if he plays, one, I just can't assume that he is going to be at 100. One, I just can't assume, let me put it this way, I can't assume that he is playing in the opening round of the tournament. And if he's not playing, is there a little bit of rust after a couple days off, after a couple games off, this, that, the other thing? And then on top of that with Cooper Flagg, I also just think the physicality and athleticism of Mississippi State could give Duke some problems. We know that Josh Hubbard can go for 30. We know that Josh Hubbard can go for 22 and a half. And all of a sudden you're down 43-28 and you don't even know what happened. I think that Mississippi State, I know they're better offensively. I don't know that they have quite enough against the size and length of Duke, but this is one we're circling. If Cooper Flagg is not available, I think the upset can happen. I will take Mississippi State to win this game, though. Liberty versus Arizona. I'll take Arizona to advance to the Sweet 16. They're up, they're down, but again, I think the up and down stuff is a little bit overrated. Of their last 6 losses, 5 of them were to either Houston, on the road at Iowa State, on the road at Kansas, or to BYU. I think Arizona beats Liberty. Bottom half of the bracket, BYU and Wisconsin. Very similar teams. Wisconsin shoots the 3-ball well. Wisconsin has a star veteran player named John Tanji, no different than BYU with Richie Saunders. A little bit probably more athletic than they get credit for. They shoot the 3-ball pretty well. As I said, I'm a little Cougar crazy. I'm going to take BYU to win this game. I think they're very similar teams. I think BYU's better. It's not a knock on Wisconsin, who was very good in the Big Ten. But listen, finished 13-7 in the Big Ten. Their final 4 conference games, they went 2-2 in their final 4. I think BYU is really good. I think BYU advances. St. Mary's versus Alabama. Love St. Mary's. Love the story. Alabama is way too big, way too athletic. Alabama advances to the Sweet 16. So 1 versus 4, Duke versus Arizona. BYU versus Alabama in a 6 versus 2 game. Let's get to those 2 games. Duke versus Arizona. I just don't think Arizona has enough. Arizona is big. Arizona is athletic. They're not as big. They're not as athletic as Duke. Arizona shoots the ball well. They don't shoot as well as Duke. Cooper Flagg, we would assume by a second weekend would be good to go, would be, as close to 100% as you can get in an NCAA tournament game. And so I just bring it up because I think that is a tough ask of Cooper Flagg or of the Arizona Wildcats. I think it's a bad matchup for them. I don't love how that would work out for them. The other thing, by the way, worth noting, I'm trying to check here real quick. Never mind. I was going to say, the way the bracket is set up on ESPN, by the way, is so bad. Another conversation for another day. I would like Duke to win that game. And then Arizona versus BYU. Listen, I know I'm Cougar crazy, but I think the Tide, the Tide, here's the thing. The Tide don't shoot the 3-ball well, but a couple things on Alabama. One, listen, I know they haven't played great down the stretch, but let's look at who they've lost to down the stretch. Oh, they lost to Tennessee at the buzzer in a game they could have won. They lost to Florida twice, which might be the best team in the country. Grant Nelson got hurt in one of those games. They lost to Auburn when Auburn was playing as well as anybody. It's not like they're losing to, middle of the pack and bottom of the pack SEC teams. I think Alabama's probably playing better than they get credit for. I think the size and there's not too many teams that are bigger and more athletic than BYU. Alabama is one of them. I think it's tough for me to see BYU winning that game, although I will say BYU is a much better three-point shooting team. I think we think of Alabama as this great three-point shooting team. They really aren't. I would like BYU to win that game, or Alabama to win that game, excuse me. Duke versus Alabama in the Elite Eight. I'm going to call for a little bit of an upset. I'm going to pick Alabama to beat Duke, and let me explain why. With Duke, so Duke's a great team. And I think every time anybody picks against Duke, it's, oh, you hate Duke, and oh, you're a critic, and oh, you're a hater, and oh, you're this, and oh, you're that. And it's like, well, no, we're not, but let's also be fair here as well. Duke, in its biggest games of the year, like against comparable competition, yes, they beat Auburn. By the way, they've been carrying that Auburn win since November. I'm sorry, other teams have beaten Auburn since. Like, it was amazing when Auburn was unbeatable and nobody had beaten them. But Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida all beat them in the final 2 weeks of the season, okay? So it's not that that win isn't great, but it doesn't quite feel the same. And on top of that, think about the other big games they played. Lost to Kentucky on a neutral. Lost to Kansas on a neutral. Lost at Clemson. They do have the great win over Auburn. They did destroy everyone in the ACC. I want to give them credit. But I just think when they meet teams with similar size, similar athleticism, they're beatable. So I have Alabama, a team that I didn't like all year. I've been saying all year, I think there's something not quite right with them. Nate Oates made it to the Final Four last year. I think he makes it again. I have Alabama going to the Final Four. Producer Matt, we could go through one more really quick, but I want to take a quick break. Let's come back and we will get to the final region of the bracket, the Midwest region, Kentucky, Tennessee, Houston. And then we'll talk a little bit about this Indiana coaching search. What a day and what a night it is. Take a quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what. Do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more. All available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. I think this is the final segment of the show, so good to be back. Let's go ahead and get to the Midwest. Let's also go ahead and get to the Midwest, and we will talk about this Indiana coaching search. I see somebody in the comments. West Virginia fans are pissed because they will have a fourth head coach in 4 years. By the way, really quick reminder, pinned at the top of the YouTube live chat, our Torres Survivor Pool. Sign $20, minimum $500 in cash prizes. But the more people that enter, the more money that's in there. $20 to enter, the more people that enter. Winner takes all, Survivor Pool. You know how it works. You pick one team a day. Once you pick that team, you cannot pick them again. So for more information, check it out. So excited for this Survivor Pool. So excited. Again, go ahead and click the link at the top of the show description. You can also see it in the YouTube live chat as well. By the way, I'll just be very quick on this, but I know you know if you're going to a game this weekend, if you're going to anything this weekend, not just the NCAA tournament, a reminder, SeatGeek, SeatGeek app, SeatGeek.com. Use promo code Torres, your first purchase. You get $20 off your first purchase. We've had a lot of you use it. I actually got a note from our SeatGeek guy he's very happy with this. So maybe this is the start of a beautiful friendship and a beautiful relationship, but we cannot do it without your support. And by the way, like I said, it's not just the NCAA tournament. It could be a concert. It could be next weekend. Maybe if your team advances, you're not going to this weekend, but you'll go to next weekend. Maybe you're going to the NIT game. I don't want to ask. It's none of my business. Maybe you're going to the Crown in Vegas. But SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, $20 off your first purchase. With that said, let's keep it going. Let's get to the Midwest region. I'll be real. We'll keep rocking and rolling. I'll keep rocking and rolling here. Top of the region, Houston opens against SIU Edwardsville. First team to clinch an NCAA tournament bid. First ever NCAA tournament bid. Congrats, you get the Houston Cougars. Torres remains Cougar crazy. I have Houston winning this game by 1,000,000. Gonzaga versus Georgia. Well, I kind of said this pseudo-interesting note here. Georgia's five-star freshman, Asa Newell, chose Georgia over Gonzaga. So maybe an Asa Newell revenge game against Gonzaga? I don't think so. Remember, Gonzaga, by the way, has not they've made it to at least the Sweet 16 every year since 2015. Think even if they beat Georgia, even if they beat Georgia, I don't think they're beating Houston, but I have Georgia winning this game and advancing. Clemson versus McNeese. So I'll be real. When the bracket first came out, I said, give me Will Wade, give me the American Gangster, give me the McNeese Cowboys. By the way, I think we're going to be talking a lot about Will Wade here over the next couple weeks. He's not getting the Indiana job. I think he's getting another job after this season ends. But again, another conversation for yet another day. I bring it up solely to say when this bracket came out, I liked McNeese. But the thing with McNeese, and Will Wade said it on this show. He said, look, we don't have a 7-footer because we wouldn't play him in league play. They're a smaller team. If you haven't seen them, super athletic team, super athletic, all that. But the problem with them is that they just don't have, they just don't have like that size that you need to compete at the top of the sport. And again, to reiterate, the reason that they just don't have that size is because they don't need it in their league. And so I solely bring it up to very simply say that this is just a bad matchup for them. If you've watched Clemson, you watched them maybe against Kentucky, you watched them against Duke earlier in the year. They got the Victor Locking kid who's like 7'1". They also got the Shefflin kid who, listen, he not a huge kid, but, he just finds a way to make plays. I mean, he was awesome against Kentucky earlier this year. He was awesome against Louisville, 14-12 in that conference tournament. By the way, the win against Duke, 12-10. I just think it's a tough matchup for McNeese. So I'm a Will Wade guy. I believe in Will Wade. I think this is a tough matchup for them. Give me Clemson advancing. High Point versus Purdue. How about Torres' Purdue Boilermakers? Just kidding. Purdue fans hate me. I'm going to say this. I'll take a little bit of an upset here. I like High Point to pull off the upset against Purdue. First of all, with Purdue, solid season. Listen, I can joke, but it's a solid season. But listen, you look at Purdue in their last, they lost 4 in a row in the middle of February. Then they win 2 in a row. Then they, by the way, lose 2 of their final 3. They lose the final game of their regular season. So overall, they lost 5 of their last 7 in the regular season, beat USC in the conference tournament, lose to Michigan. So 5 of their last 7, 7 of their last, 6 of their last 9. And High Point's a very interesting team. 29-5 overall. Okay, how about this? They lost early in conference play. January 16th, they fall to 15-5, which means they have won 14 straight games coming in. They shoot the 3 ball really well. They're a very efficient offense. Really good guards on that team. A couple former high major kids, DeMaurian Williams, who began his career at Texas Tech, Bobby Pettiford, who began his career at Kansas. I like the High Point Panthers to pull off the upset. So not only am I Cougar crazy, apparently I'm Panther crazy as well. Another conversation for another day. Bottom half of the bracket, I'll give you a little bit of an upset here. Illinois, they've just been up and down all year long. I will have Texas winning the play-in game, and I will have Texas beating Illinois in the opener. Illinois, every time you buy into them, every time you believe in them, they end up falling apart, losing a game that you don't expect them to. You thought going into the conference tournament, can they make a little bit of a run? They're as talented as anybody. And they get to the conference tournament, and it's just like, they get destroyed by Maryland once they get to the second round. So they take care of business in their opener against an Iowa team that literally fired their coach the next day, and then they get destroyed by Maryland. Say what you want about Texas. Listen, I think Rodney Terry is not only coaching for his job. I don't think it's hyperbole to say, I don't want to say short of a national championship, but what I'm saying is I think short of a Final Four, Rodney Terry is not the coach next year. Remember, he made the Elite Eight 2 years ago to keep that job. I think most of the administration is over him, but I bring it up to say that they won 2 of their final 3 games. They win 2 games at the SEC tournament. They do lose to a good Tennessee team. I like Texas to beat Xavier on Wednesday night, and then to advance to face Illinois and beat Illinois in the round of 64. Speaking of beating teams in the round of 64, Troy over Kentucky. No, I'm just kidding. Kentucky's going to win that game. Listen, we're going to get to Kentucky in a minute. They're so beat up. I said it a few weeks ago. I think Mark Pope has done as good of a coaching job the last month, just surviving all of the injuries as he did early in the season when, of course, they were beating Gonzaga and Florida and everybody. It's going to go down as one of the great Kentucky what-ifs. You have this team at full strength. I think they can get to San Antonio, but they get to the round of 32 after beating Troy. Bottom half of the bracket, ironically, going to games in Lexington. UCLA versus Utah State. Was talking to my buddy Ed. Ed, if you're listening, shout out to Ed. I talked to him on, Wednesday. Or Tuesday, excuse me, originally from Kentucky, a Kentucky fan who now lives in LA. We're talking about UCLA. And I said, UCLA is either going to win this game by 20 or lose it. I'm calling for the loss. Something's off with Mick Cronin. Listen, I'll just say this. It feels blatantly obvious Mick Cronin is looking for literally any job other than UCLA. He complained nonstop about the travel. I think this is an interesting note. Game is in Lexington, okay? What just happened? After complaining about travel all year long, UCLA goes to the Big Ten tournament. They immediately get destroyed by Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament. Fly home. Now they have to fly back to Lexington, late game. You're sitting around all day. Cronin's going to be in a bad mood. Listen, Utah State is limited. They're not as good athletically as UCLA. I just think there's something that hasn't been right about UCLA all year long. I believe they only won 2 games also out of the Pacific time zone. They did beat Indiana like a day after Mike Woodson got fired. They beat Northwestern late in the season. But the travel, I think, has worn on that team. Cronin was seemingly in a bad mood all year. I actually like Utah State to pull off the upset, get the win there. I know Utah State is obviously flying across country. I just think they're going to be more motivated than UCLA. Everybody should be motivated in the NCAA tournament, but I think Mick Cronin is basically checked out. Tennessee against Wofford. Again, if you want hot takes on Wofford, you got to go to another place. We ain't doing it here. I like Wofford to lose that game by 1 million to Tennessee. Houston versus Georgia. I could go on and on. Georgia, I credit Mike White. Listen, I've been very critical of Mike White through the years. I thought he did a good job the back half of this year. Georgia played well down the stretch, 4 straight to end the regular season. They lose to Oklahoma in the SEC tournament. Doesn't change the fact that they ain't beaten Houston in the round of 32. Houston, I believe, has been to, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24. They've been to 5 straight Sweet 16s. This will be the 6th. Give me Houston to the Sweet 16. Clemson versus High Point. Listen, I'll tell you this. You talk to people who have played Clemson, they're like, that team is really good. Now, the good thing is for if Clemson does win that opener, if they get High Point, I think they just match up really well with either High Point. I certainly think they match up with Purdue. We could go on and on about Clemson, but the show is at an hour 23. Give me Clemson to beat High Point, advance to the Sweet 16 in Indianapolis. Kentucky versus Texas. Okay, so I have Texas beating Illinois, Texas beating Xavier. By the way, if Xavier were to beat Texas, if you're listening to this on Wednesday night and that game has gone final, Thursday and that game has gone final, I would probably take Illinois to beat Xavier, but I like Kentucky to beat any of those three teams, really. I know Kentucky's less than 100%. I know Lamont Butler's playing with one shoulder. I know Mark Pope has obviously said, hey, Lamont's, a warrior and he's fighting. I don't think this is necessarily the round where it gets to Kentucky. I just think they're really well coached. They don't play down to their competition. And oh, by the way, Texas, they beat them once, or excuse me, they lost to them once. And I think that is actually important because to me, what that says is that they're not going to take them lightly. I actually like Kentucky to potentially beat Texas in that game. So we'll keep it going here. Sweet 16, Houston versus Clemson. Kind of a similar team. Houston's better. Clemson, I think, could give them fits because Clemson is tough defensively, a bunch of grown men. Remember, by the way, Clemson got to the Elite Eight last year against Alabama. So they're battle-tested. Nothing sexy about them. But they do. I just don't think they match up with Houston. Torres is Cougar crazy. Everybody knows that. Houston over Clemson to get to the Elite Eight, where they'll play the Tennessee Volunteers. I know Kentucky has beaten Tennessee twice this year, but I think asking them to beat them for a third time is just too much. Tennessee, by the way, is playing much, much, much better here over the course of the last couple weeks. Tennessee, I think that the big thing is offensively, they're significantly improved. Chaz Lanier seems to be playing much better, much more confidently. He's been in double figures basically every game as Tennessee has played well down the stretch. I like Tennessee to advance to face Houston in the Elite Eight. Second straight Elite Eight for Tennessee. Listen, this is a game that I think could go either way. This is not a game where I think blah, 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 this and that. And so I just bring it up to very simply say that I think Tennessee could pull off what I would deem to be an upset. I would assume Houston would be favored in that game. But Houston's just so tough. Like it gets so tiring saying the same thing about them. Houston has lost one game since Thanksgiving week. Now, I know you could sit there and say that about like I get it, right? Duke had a great regular season. Duke didn't play in the Big 12. Houston played in the Big 12, beat Arizona twice, beat BYU. BYU was on a 9-game winning streak. Houston obliterated them, okay? So I will say, this is a game, they call, I saw somebody refer to it as that Spider-Man meme where one Spider-Man is pointing to the other. That's basically Tennessee and Houston. I could see Tennessee winning this game, but I got Houston winning to advance to the Final Four. So Torres' Final Four is officially Auburn and St. John's on one side. It is Alabama and Houston on the other side. You can see on the screen here, I'm going to take Auburn over St. John's. I think this is where St. John's finally, the physicality, they can't overwhelm Auburn. And I have Houston beating Auburn to win the national championship. Houston, by the way, was my preseason pick. I was Cougar crazy in October and November. Apparently, I am Cougar crazy here in March as well. I love Houston. I do. But I'll tell you this. I'll be real. You look at this bracket, I think there's about 7-8 teams that are just a cut above everybody else. If Tennessee beats Houston, it wouldn't shock me. I think if Texas Tech beats St. John's, if Florida wins the national championship, it wouldn't shock me. I do like Houston, and I think Houston too. Think about Houston. Every other number one seed has kind of had their moment, right? Auburn was kind of the toast of the town for about the first probably 75% of the college basketball season. Then you look up and Duke has lost one SEC game or one ACC game, and you're like, oh, they're amazing. They're just better than everybody else. Then after that, you look at Florida over the last week. And so I just bring it up because it just feels like everyone has kind of had their moment in the sun. Everybody has had their moment kind of in the spotlight. And, I just think Houston's been kind of quietly flying under the radar for most of the season. So Houston over Auburn is my national championship. Let's see here. Matt edited him so he makes sense as whatever. Somebody says Auburn's lost 3 of their last 4, so we'll see if they hit. Yeah, listen, Auburn's lost 3 of their last 4. And by the way, one team that they did beat was Houston. But the thing with Auburn is, of those 4, one was to Alabama at the buzzer. Easily could have won that. One was to Tennessee in a game that I think Tennessee is just a tough matchup for them. And one was Texas A&M that desperately needed a win. So I'm not as worried as everybody else. Give me Houston over Auburn in the national championship. That is who I have. I have Houston over Auburn, and I have St. John's and Alabama going to the Final Four. By the way, shout out to our Torres on St. John's and Torres on Bama page. Our intern Drew actually runs both of them. An Alabama student who grew up a St. John's fan. He's going to be busy if that Final Four plays to fruition. Tell you what, that's what we're going to do. We'll take one last break because I just need a breath. And we'll come back. We'll talk briefly about the Indiana hire of Darian DeVries. I like the hire. I've talked myself into it. I didn't know how I felt about it a little while ago. Take a quick break, come back. If any super chats pop up, we'll prioritize those in the comment section. Get to a few questions. 90 minutes strong. We'll take a quick break. By the way, how about this? We're about to have an NCAA tournament game go final as we do this. But we'll take a quick break, come back, get to some of your questions. Indiana coaching search. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what. Do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more. All available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. Final segment of a 2-hour show. So good to be back. Producer Matt has just alerted me that his dog is about to go to the bathroom on the floor. Producer Matt, you go ahead, take that dog out. Torres is going to ride solo here for the final 15, 20 minutes of the show. We really do appreciate. We have a lot of you that have been in here since the beginning of the episode. And this is just awesome. An awesome crowd. By the way, as producer Matt gets the dog outside really quickly, Wes says, how come Elliot Cadeau is on every commercial on True TV? I have noticed as well that Elliot Cadeau is on a lot of commercials. And then Steve Strong says, do you think UConn can make a game against Florida or do they get blown out? Steve, thank you for joining the show. I will just tell you this. I actually have picked Oklahoma to beat UConn in the round of 64. Love my Huskies, but I just think it is a tough. I just think they don't have the guys this year. They don't have the horses. Whatever. It is what it is. So with that said, let's go ahead and wrap here. One final segment of the show. By the way, you drop your bracket questions. We'll get to some of them after. Live stream audience has been awesome. But I do want to go ahead and switch gears because just minutes before we went live, a topic and a conversation that we have had for weeks now has been resolved. The question, we have discussed it, we have debated it. Who was going to be the next Indiana head coach? We talked about Chris Beard. We go back to the Brad Stevens days, okay? We talked about Brad Stevens. We talked about Chris Beard. We talked about TJ Otzelberger. I told you why Rick Pitino wasn't taking the job. Dusty May. You know, you think about where we were in mid-February when Mike Woodson resigned. Well, on Tuesday, we got an official answer to who is going to be the next Indiana head coach as West Virginia coach Darian DeVries has taken the Indiana head coaching job. He will be your next Indiana head coach. And I'll just be real, Hoosiers fans. When his name emerged over the last couple of days, I wasn't totally sure. But as time has gone on, I actually think that I really like the hire, and I think that he is going to be the guy that you need for this team and for this program. And by the way, for anyone who says, oh, Torres was going to say nice things, whatever, go back to when Mike Woodson was hired. I said I didn't like it. I didn't think it was going to go well. So I'm not just saying it because Indiana hired a guy, okay? But I believe this is the right guy at the right moment in time for Indiana basketball. So let's go ahead and break it down. By the way, for Indiana fans who have found this page or found this YouTube video, Torres on Indiana for your late-breaking Indiana news. Also, we need help running our Torres on Indiana page. If you're an Indiana student, a college student that loves Indiana basketball, email me, Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com. Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com. We need an intern to help us run the page. Our interns a lot of them have gotten jobs in the media. It's a great internship opportunity. Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com. We need an intern for Torres on Indiana. With that said, let's dive into the hire. And so listen, as far as like the surprise of this hire, I don't think it's really that big of a surprise. Okay. So first of all, as the list got whittled down, listen, Brad Stevens, I never thought was taking the job. We did Flight Tracker for a day with that, but it wasn't happening. Dusty May signed the extension. I never thought he was taking the job either. I don't think Dusty May is a fishbowl, all eyes on you kind of head coach. And by the way, I kind of said the same thing with Ben McCollum. You can go back to a few days ago. We did a segment because there was talk that Brad Brownell was going to get the job at Indiana. And I said, Brad Brownell will be a disaster. It will be Shiano Sunday at Indiana if Brad Brownell gets the head coaching job. But I also said, I don't think Ben McCollum, I don't think that's the spot for him, okay? Because at the end of the day, Ben McCollum, small town guy from Iowa. And the thing about Ben McCollum was this. This was a guy that took forever to leave the D2 ranks altogether. I think there was a story I heard him say where when he took the Drake job, he actually went to bed and on that night almost decided to not go to D1 because he was so happy at Northwestern Missouri, okay? And so when you're happy at the D2 level and it took you 6, 7, 8, 9 years to even get to the D1 level, I don't think you're going to just jump to a mega job, whatever. That's not a knock on Indiana, by the way. I know there's a lot of people in the media that have criticized Indiana fans. I'm not going to be one of those guys. I think the passion, the excitement, the enthusiasm for Indiana basketball is great as long as a coach knows what they're getting into. Listen, I know there's a lot of negativity about Indiana fans. Matt Painter ran his mouth. I totally disagreed with what Matt Painter said. I think he's got to worry about his own fan base. I know the Umar Ballo comments from a few days ago weren't great, but there are bad fans in every fan base. But what I'll tell you is this, and I'll say this, Indiana fans, I go on with Dan Dockich all the time. I love Dan. I know some people in Indiana don't like him. I love him. I think he's the best, okay? But Dan and I talked about this on his Indianapolis radio show about 2-3 weeks ago, is that some coaches just aren't built for Indiana, for Kentucky, for UConn, for Alabama football, for Ohio State football. But what I will also say, a lot of coaches love it. And not only do a lot of coaches love it, let's even take it a step further, okay? Most coaches would rather go to a place where the fans care too much than not enough, where you have to beg people to come. Nobody's ever going to have to beg you to come to Assembly Hall in Bloomington. And so I never thought Ben McCollum was the guy. And I'll be real. When Darian DeVries' name emerged, at first I was like, I just don't know. But as I've thought about it more, and as I continue to think about it, I actually think that I like this hire a lot more than I realized. First of all, the number one thing is exactly what I just said. Darian DeVries is from the Midwest. Obviously, for people who don't know, he's originally from Iowa, was a Creighton assistant forever, goes to Drake, wins at Drake, goes to West Virginia. We know about what happened at West Virginia on Selection Sunday, and goes to West Virginia. But he was a guy that wanted this job, okay? I think the last couple of days has been interesting. He puts out a statement about the West Virginia stuff, but then there's talk about him interviewing with Iowa. Pete Thamel says that he is no longer a candidate at Iowa. To me, that said he was getting this job. But I think first and foremost, he knows what he's getting into. He knows what he's signing up for. And listen, whether it's Dusty May, whether it's Ben McCollum, these guys might be great X's and O's coaches, but if they're not built for the 24/7 spotlight that is Indiana basketball, then I just don't know that you want that guy as your head coach, okay? And so it's not that they're not great coaches. It's just that this guy knows what this job's about, knows what to expect, knows what expectations are, and is going to be ready for the challenge. I think beyond that, I think we got to look at what he did. Won at Drake. I know a lot of people win at Drake, but was very successful there. By the way, before his son even came, won a conference regular season title, didn't get, gets to the tournament in back-to-back years. And I think what he did at West Virginia this year is as impressive as anything, and I don't think he's going to get enough credit for it. But first of all, just like he's about to at Indiana, he went to a place where there was no players, where the team was coming off a disappointing season. It was a worse situation than what he's going to inherit at Indiana, okay? Goes to West Virginia, builds a roster in one offseason, and immediately puts together a team that I think when they were fully healthy was about a top 25 team. They go to the Bahamas. They beat Gonzaga. They go to the Bahamas. They beat Arizona. Now, I understand Arizona isn't quite what it once was. Arizona wasn't quite then what it became later in the year. It doesn't change the fact that a win over Arizona is really good. By the way, that was technically a non-conference game, but you get the point. And then, oh, by the way, when they were pseudo at full strength, they went to Fog Allen Fieldhouse and won. And so, yes, by the back half of the year, they struggled, but that's what happens when you have injuries. That's what happens when you have Tucker DeVries out for the season with an injury starting in mid-December. And so, to me, you look at how this all played out. You look at the fact that you have a situation where he took over a very similar situation, no players, whatever, immediately won in a very tough league, should have been in the NCAA tournament. By the way, I find it very ironic, as I know everybody listening does. I think West Virginia and Indiana were the two best teams and two teams that should have been in the tournament. I said all week, if I was a one-man committee, I would have had West Virginia, Indiana, and UC Irvine in, North Carolina, Texas, and Xavier out. But I just bring it up because how about them apples? Indiana misses the tournament. They choose not to go to the NIT. Then Darian DeVries and West Virginia get left out as well. And you now have a coach 2 days ahead of schedule. So to me, I think this is a great move. I think what has to have you excited is a few things. First of all, I'm a firm believer. One, you got to know what you're getting into in a job. We just talked about that. In some ways, it reminds me of Mark Pope at Kentucky last year. What did Mark Pope say at his opening press conference? What did he say? He said, I understand the assignment. Darian DeVries understands the assignment, okay? So that's one. Two, and this is as important, he now gets a head start on all this portal stuff, okay? First of all, he gets to meet with the team. We know that a lot of guys are graduating. He gets to decide who he wants to keep. Now, as we were coming on air here, Malik Renew officially entered the portal. Doesn't really mean anything. He can come back if Darian DeVries wants him. Gabe Cupps entered the portal. He can come back if Darian DeVries wants him. But a couple things. Darian DeVries is going to take his son with him, Tucker DeVries, who, by the way, was averaging like 14 points and 6 boards on 47% three-point shooting before he got hurt. So you're adding an NBA caliber player there. And then he can get a head start on this portal, where I know the portal isn't technically open yet, but let's remember, one, everybody is talking to everybody. So even if guys aren't in the portal yet, you're kind of getting a feel right now for who will be available. But then two, and this to me is the important part, is that you also can start talking to guys that are able to enter the portal. Remember, you get to campus, you can talk to your guys. On top of that, don't forget that all these coaches that got fired, all these places that there have been coaching changes, you are allowed to talk to those players. And so whether it's guys from Iowa, whether it's guys from whatever, you can talk to those guys. They're allowed to be in the portal right now, and you can start getting a head start on this roster. So I'm really excited to see who he retains and who he brings back. Listen, I'm done being in the world of you need to bring back this guy. Mark Pope didn't bring back anybody from Kentucky's roster last year. It worked out pretty well for him, I would say. Arkansas brought back Trevin Brazil. That's it. It worked out well for them. Kevin Young at BYU brought back a bunch, and it worked out well for him as well. So in a perfect world, like I said, Malik Renew entered the portal. If I was prioritizing guys, I really like Miles Rice. I know he didn't shoot the ball well. I know he probably didn't pass the ball well enough, but I think another year with him, he'd be really good. Malik Renew's kind of not a really big three. He doesn't shoot the three, okay? And he's a little bit undersized. I don't know what his intentions would be, but I just bring it up because there's plenty of talent in that building. But if you decide that you don't want to keep him, you don't have to. But I will say that I do think that this is a good hire. By the way, something just happened in that opening game of the NCAA tournament. I don't know what it was. Let's see here. I don't know. Whatever. But I like the Darian DeVries hire. Indiana fans, congrats. You deserve this. And I think he's the right guy. I think the last thing I was going to say, all these schools, whether it was Kentucky, whether it was Louisville with Pat Kelsey, like I said, you need a young guy. You need a guy that gets modern college basketball, that gets the portal, that gets NIL. I've used this example a million times, but, and it's a fitting example for Indiana. Like a guy like Tom, you don't want the 60-year-old dude that's the coaching veteran. Sorry, Tom Crean. I think you belong in a studio at ESPN. Sorry, Seth Greenberg. I think you belong in a studio at ESPN. You need young, you need dynamic, you need dudes that accept that, hey, NIL is here, portal is here, rev sharing is here. How are we going to figure it all out? And I think that's an interesting last development with Indiana. We did a segment a few weeks ago, and in it, we talked about how Indiana, Scott Dolson, their AD, has said, we are going to be at the top of rev sharing. In other words, whatever is the most you can spend in rev sharing for basketball, we're going to be at the top of the list. So he's going to have plenty of NIL to work with. And listen, I love the Mark Pope hire a year ago. I love the Pat hire a year ago. I think Indiana got their version of that. We have just talked for an hour and a freaking half, okay? Almost 2 hours. It is time to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media. Really quickly, make sure you SeatGeek, promo code Torres if you're going to games. Also, the Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool. The Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool, minimum $500. The more of you who enter, the more money. $20 to enter. Compete against Torres. Compete against listeners of this show. And hey, worst case scenario, you're winning at least $500. Time to go. Appreciate your support. By the way, thank you to Dan Rivera, who says, made it the entire episode of the show. Will go again tomorrow. Dan, we appreciate your support, brother. Support to nobody, support to everybody who's been here for an hour and 47 minutes. It's time to go. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to Tito's Vodka, who is not a sponsor, but I'm about to have one right now with some club soda. I'll be back probably an episode tomorrow. If not, definitely Thursday after the games. Aaron Torres Pod.